Hey, this is Ray here with a quick tutorial on how to output data from Excel to a text file. Just before we start, I'd like to note that this is my first video on YouTube, so I'd love to hear any feedback that you have. Anyway, I received a message about 2 days ago from a person who has this file here, some text you can see, as well as times for these texts. These are all captions, or subtitles rather, for a movie, and he needs these into a text file. He sent me this link here. This is the format he needs right in this box here. So what we're going to do is create a macro within Excel to do that automatically. So the first thing here, we need to go back to Excel. And if you don't have this developer tab already, go to File, and then Options, and then down here you see Customize Ribbon. Make sure that this developer tab here is checked. It's unchecked by default, so you have to have that there before you can start. So once you have that, go to the developer tab here, and if you don't already have a personal macro workbook, you'll know if you do. If you don't, or you're not sure even, just hit record macro, and then it doesn't really matter what it says here, just make sure that it's here stored in this personal macro workbook. You want to have it there so it's not stored within the file that you'll be working with, so you can use this on more than just a singular file. You don't have to keep copying it from one workbook to another. You can just open it on any workbook. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just hit OK, and then stop it either down here at the stop right there, or go back to developer and stop recording. So once you do that, you can go up here again to developer, hit Visual Basic, which opens up a new window. You can also press F11, and here you can see that your personal macro workbook right here, you open up that, and you have this new macro, maybe in a different module here. I won't get into what that is exactly. It won't really matter for right now. Anyway, just clear this out. All we were really doing there is creating new personal workbook for our code in. Anyway, so we'll change this to a more descriptive name here. This is just the name of our little program. So here we're going to say Excel to text. Okay. So the first step here, and well, actually before we start, see I have this code here that says option explicit. You may not see that. You don't have to have it there. All it means is that any variables that we use in our code have to be defined at the beginning of the function, at the beginning of the program. It just helps to cut down on errors where you're basically just mistyping names. It also speeds up the program a little bit. You don't have to have it, but it helps just figuring out issues with your code. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is basically figure out all the components that we're going to need here. So we're definitely going to need a file to output it to. So we'll create a name here. Then to do that, you write dim, which just defines the variable, and then you have to say what type of variable it is. So here it's a string, which is just a string of characters. Essentially, it's a word or phrase. And so here, yeah, we have a file name, a word, and it's a word or phrase. It's a string. And right now, we haven't set any number or any characters or anything to that. We're saying that we will use that as a variable later on in our code. Then we'll look back at this Excel file here. Looks like things that are important. We're going to need a number here. We're going to need the times, and we're going to need the actual subtitles. So again, we'll make new variables here. Dim, say I count, will just be this number right here. So I think it's just the number of subtitles, like the sequence of them within this movie. And then we're also going to need that's an integer, which is just a number, a whole number. And then we'll also need the starting time, which is just going to be a string of characters for now. We'll also need the end time, also a string. And then we'll need these two lines here. For each number, we have 2 lines of text, as you can see. So we're going to need text1, as text string. We have basically all of the variables that we're going to need here as far as what we're going to output to our final text file. So then we have to figure out a way to traverse this Excel file, how to determine how the program is going to move through here programmatically and output it to the text file. So we're going to need, basically needs to start here. This is the line where it starts. And that needs to end here. So say start row, again, the integer, just a whole number for this line. And then we'll also need a end row. We're also going to need a current row to say which row we're currently looking at to pull the times and text out of there. We need a current row. Cool. Okay. So with that in mind, we can start here. So our starting row, I think we just hard code this in here. I think it's always going to be 5. I'm not sure about that. That depends on how his files are set up, but it looks like they should all just be start here at 5. So we'll just say I start row 5. That's all we need to do. So now we have the variable, which is the row where we start, is 5. And we'll say the end row, we need to get it to automatically pull out here. We can't just say that it's 24 because you might have a movie that has more than 10 subtitles, which you probably would. So what we need to do is programmatically figure that out. And the way to do that here would be to go here to cells. If you write cells and then row, it's basically row, column, although you don't write that unless it's variables that you have. Right here, let's say this is 5 for our row, 5 for our column. We'll write 5, 5. If this was a string, which again, characters, right now it would just pull out this text. But instead, what we're going to do is we're actually going to modify that a little further here. And we're going to say .end Excel down, which basically, so the cells 5, 5, tells us to look at this cell here, E5, and then .end Excel down tells it to instead look at here and go all the way down. It's essentially the same as if you press hold Control and press down, it goes to the last row with anything in it. And so now basically you're just looking at that, and then from here you write dot row, and that returns the row number. We have the row that has the last bit of text in it, the last subtitle that we need. So from there, actually, one thing I didn't mention before we go any further and start pointing text out, another thing this gentleman mentioned was that you might either want the English or the translated version of the subtitles for any particular movie. And so we're going to have to account for that in our program. So looking at that, we'll go back up here to our variable declarations, and we'll also make another variable for the I subtitle, I text column as an integer. So that's just the number that represents the column where the text is, 5 for E. Oh, I didn't mention that before either. Everything is done as numbers, so E is 5, F is 6, just the number of the alphabet. So there we have the text column that we need. So we're going to need to basically ask the user for input as far as which one should be used. So to do that, we can say I text column, actually probably what should say S language so we're going to ask for the language instead, and we'll translate that into the text, because without looking at it you might not know which column number it is, but obviously you know whether you want the English or the translated version. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to say S language is equal to, here we're going to ask these for input, we're going to say input box. And here you can see when you write a function that it'll show you the properties that you can write for. So here, let's say enter E for English or T for translate. Basically there, just asking the user input. Actually, I'll show that right now. We go here, we say developer, and this is how you run the macro eventually. Just say macro, what is that? Excel to text, we'll run this. You see it, this is what we just wrote here. This line, pulls up this box. Enter T for English or T for translated. Here we can write anything, but it's not going to do anything right now. It's really told it to do anything. So, yeah, did nothing. Now we need to do something with that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make an if statement, which basically just evaluates whether the statement right behind it is true or false. If it's true, then it will go into that block of code. So you have if then statement is what it is. So if you put your statement to evaluate right here, anything between these blocks of code will run. So here we're going to say if S language equals E, then we'll want to do something in here. And that thing we're going to do is say I text column will be 5. Yeah, that's 5 for English. So if it's English, then we know that the column that we need is 5. And so actually what we're going to do here is say else if, so it's another statement. So if the language is translated, then say that the text column is 6. Cool. Okay, so and one way to test your code while you're writing it is to just have it output, kind of like the input box here, how that popped up on the screen. You can have something else, it's just a message box. All it does is just spit out whatever you say. So here we're going to say I text. So we run that. Again, just run the macros. And we'll say Excel the text. So we say E. See, it's 5. But just one thing here, if we instead write here that say E, someone just writes E instead of capitalizing it, it's not going to work. It's going to be 0. And that is because we're checking if it's E, specifically capitalized. And so to fix this, what we're going to want to do is say new case, which capitalizes everything in the string. So if we do that to both of them, it'll be comparing two strings that are both have every letter capitalized. Both. And then we count that scenario. Another scenario that could happen is someone doesn't write E, this still won't account for that. So what we're probably going to do here is that one and say we're actually writing Boolean here, which is either true or false. No other value can go in Boolean. Say Boolean correct. We'll just say ask if they've given a correct. We'll say correct language, and we'll say while the language equals false. And this is kind of like the if and if, where while this is true, everything inside this block of code before this when statement will run. And so in this case, we're checking that while this is false, which automatically when you define a Boolean, it's false, kind of like how the integer was 0 when we message boxed it, and we didn't have one of these two cases. This will just make sure that if someone wrote like spaghetti in the input box, that they will not have, it won't run the program, basically. It won't let you move past that point until you either put E or T, which are the only two correct options. So if we do have the right output, we need to put that the correct language has been inputted. So here we have correct language, same case here. Now, once this is true, it won't go back through here again, because this will say true, this will be true, and it doesn't equal false. True does not equal false, obviously. So then it won't evaluate in here again, it'll go down to the next part of the program. So we'll test that out again real quick. Go here, macros, Excel text, run it. So if you write like right here, it doesn't do anything. Nothing happened. But for E, even to lowercase e, again, we make it uppercase through the program. It works and gives you the right column for English. So going back to here, our program, we don't really need this, and when you either just want to comment something out or actually write a comment like this performs some function. Just a note to yourself or to anyone else that reads your code. You just put a apostrophe here, and then it doesn't actually run that line of code. It's just basically text. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do here is that we actually need to open up a text file so that I can write to it. And so actually this should probably come even before this, because the first thing that we're doing is we need to have a text file open. So we need to figure out the file name for our output text file. Whether that be the movie title or whatever, I'm not sure exactly what that should be, but it just allows you to write it in. So let's write, enter the name for the final text file. And you don't need to write that. That'll be done automatically. So that gets the name there, but that's just a name. So if we say, Aladdin, that's not really an actual place to save it. I mean, that's just be the name. If you went to your desktop and you said, here, this is the file that we're working with, and you said subtitles.txt or xlsx, but that's not the full path. So what we're going to need to do here is actually write file name equals. This is, again, we're going to give a new value to this variable. And the value that we're going to do first, we're going to do active dot path, which basically pulls. So here, we're again looking at this example, and this is on our desktop. We'll get the desktop, the path to the desktop, and then we need to append the name of the new file that we're writing here. So what we're going to do here is put and that appends the rest of the string that we're going to add here, which for our case here is, actually we need to first another /, and then we'll do this file name, which before this line is evaluated, it might seem weird that this is the same as here, but basically it's going to look, it evaluates this, right? You give it a name, and then it puts it here, and then it evaluates this and puts it here. So this as file name is actually here, actually coming from here to here, and then gets overwritten as the full path after that. And then we'll also say and .txt. We have the correct path name here, so we don't have to make sure that people are writing it here. Okay, so we have the file name. What we need to do here now is then open that file after we have these values. We don't need any of this. There's some comments that we didn't need. So to open a file, what all you need to do is say open your file, which right now it's s file, and you don't need to already have the file be there. Like right now, you can see there are no text files on my desktop. We'll just make a new one, say maybe test one, we'll call it. And you'll see it creates it and opens it at one time. So we'll do that for output as here you just have to write £, and then any number will work. That's just the syntax to work it here. So yeah, open, and then just the name of your file, including the whole path, and then for output as, and then this is basically your variable here. Well, your reference to that file is this number 1, the reference there. And so after we have that done, we just have to go through and loop through all this data and put it in the text file. So not too hard. All we gotta do is say for, really we need to look at the current row for each time we're going through it. So we say I current row. We'll start again at the start row to the end row. Yep. So going from the current row, well, going from the start row to the end row, just by looking at the current row. We do that step 2. And what we're saying there is normally it would go, say start row is 5, this one's 10. Well, in our case it's 22, 24. It would go, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here we need to do something a little different. If you look here, these are actually merged cells. And merged cells are treated a little funky. And we only need 1 number for every 2 lines of text. So we're going to count that in a little bit of a different way. I'll show you that in a minute. So what we're going to do here is then say, so we'll just skip every 2 lines again because they're merged two cells. And you always want to indent just so you can see when you're inside a different block of code. That's just a general design principle. You don't have to do it. It'll still work if you don't. It's just harder to read. Here I can see, everything in the if statement's right in here. Similarly here, so we'll say, first we need to check here. For this, we'll say I count cells, and then we'll say current row and column 1. That'll never change. We can just hard code that in there. And then actually, no, we'll just say I count equals I count plus 1. What we're going to do there. Basically, every time that it goes through there, it'll just add 1 to that. So the first time it's 1. It's essentially doing the same thing as these. But it also gives you a counter for how many times you count them, even if these numbers are messed up. So you don't have to rely on those. So then we know our start time is cells. And you can also hit, if you hit control space, it'll fill out whatever you're typing in right there. And the column for the start, when the subtitle comes in, is 2. And then similarly, the end time here is 3. Column 3, just for the end time. Not too hard. And then we're going to need these pieces of text here, which are our text 1 cell. And here, it's actually be a little bit different. So current row, and here the column could either be 5 or 6, depending on English or translated. We'll use this iText column that we figured out earlier. So we use the right column for the text that we need. We'll copy this, we'll paste it here. Text 2. Notice the second piece of text here for any one of these. current row is first time through the loop, go grab 5, and that'd be right here. Actually, grab this, but we'll just add 1. So that is grabbing 1 below it. And the next time through the loop, it'll actually go down to here at 7, and then we'll grab these 3 things, and then 1, 2. So we have all our base information now. All we need to do is we actually need to change the start and end time. You see here that it's like this, but when you look at here, there's a couple differences. First, they're all on one line. They're not separate. There's also right here this little arrow, which we don't have yet. And then here, this is a comma instead of a colon. And this is 3 numbers here for this decimal place, rather than 2, I believe, that we have here. Right? Yeah, there's 2 here, and this should be a comma, and then 3 numbers here. So I think for all of ours, the last number should be 0. So going with that, we're going to need to modify everything a little bit. So first, I think we're going to have to split all these numbers a little bit. We'll start split. Here, this is a little different. So the difference here, this is okay. Parentheses means that there are multiple values, which doesn't make a lot of sense maybe, but that'll make more sense when we use it here. That's actually a vector, or an array. So there are multiple values at different positions in that array. I mean, kind of the same way as we look at Excel, like if this is position 1, this is position 2, this is position 3 within this row, they could have different values like A, B, C here, and then they'd all be row 28. Similarly, we have this value for string. We can have multiple values, just like you have for a row, you have different columns. So when looking at this, we're going to need a split to fix this up. I mean, there would be multiple ways to do this, but what I think it's the easiest is if we split this up at each colon, because then we can rebuild it and replace this and then add on at the end. So what we'll do here is we'll say as start split is split at start time. Not too bad. And then we also need to actually say where it's going to split it. That's the delimiter here. And we'll say we're going to split it at this colon. And there we go. And now it's going to split it between the colon. Just return, in the first position you'll have 0, 0. The second position you'll have 0, 0. Third position you'll have 14. Fourth position you'll have 04. So not too bad there. We'll do that again with the end time, because we're going to need to do that too. End split. End time. Now we have it, and it's all split up into the different pieces that we need. So rebuilding each of those strings, we'll go back here, we'll say start time. Again, we could make a new variable here, but at this point we don't need anything here. We already chopped it up, so we can just reuse that variable. We could actually we'll make a new one just because. Let's say start. These are new values. This isn't really that efficient because we don't really need these. We could just reuse the other variables that we have. But we'll do it just for the sake of terms of understanding it. So the new starting string is basically we're going to need s start split. So we're going to get the first value, which is actually at position 0. It just starts at 0. All arrays do in VBA and actually a lot of different programming languages. So that will start at 0. So that's going to be our base start 0, 0, 0. And then we'll add this colon here. And then we'll do the same thing a couple times. So we can just copy and paste this. No reason to take all the time to write it. We'll say 1, 2, 3, which is actually our fourth position here. If you're looking 1, 2, 3, 4, because it starts at 0 again. So, and then again, when we're looking at the final output that we need 1, 2 colons, and then a comma. So obviously don't need this, that's after the end. We need 1, 2 colons between these 3 things, and then we need a comma here. So that fixes our issue there. And then if we look back again, this is 3 numbers, this is 2, so we just need to add another number. And here, since we only have we're just add a 0. So we'll add and 0. Cool. So it looks pretty good, I think. Apparently not. Oh, okay. I forgot to write and here between all of these. To add them correctly. So now we're good. So if we go here, copy, paste again, and we'll say, we hit Control H, which makes a lot of things easier. If you have to read something that's a little bit different. So if we say find next, all it's doing is basically just the same as Control F, except you're able to replace it. So here we can replace start with end, so we don't have to go through it manually and just say replace, 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 replace. Cool. And then it wants to go back to the top, but you don't. Then we only need to replace them in this row. Cool. So now we have our new strings. Well, we have the 2 strings as far as we have, this one now, and we have this one. We need this whole thing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new string here. That's final time string. So this is just our time string all put together, this whole line. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, so we're going to have this whole string that we have here, plus what we need, basically, we can even just copy this. So we need a space, dash, dash, less than, and then it's another space. Or actually greater than. A little tired right now. So if we put this in quotes, we can combine those things, and then we just need, I think, plus or and works, and it's just a little better. So it doesn't really have any difference in this particular circumstance, but it's better practice. We need to set this equal to the final time string. Again, I did the control space, and it does that here, although it actually ate up the end other part there. So it says equal to s start new, plus the middle section, and then the end time. Cool. We have that. Biggie. I think that's all we need. So let's print to the file. So another thing you notice when you're looking at this is there's actually a little space here. Like you have an empty line, and then a number, and then the time, and then your 2 lines of actual text. So we're going to say print number 1, which again is the reference to our file here, and then we'll just have, we don't need to write anything else. Basically, that's just a blank line. Print number 1, and then on that line, don't print anything. And then here, print number 1, and then we have our account. This actually is, there's something wrong with this. I'll just show you the issue, just as a learning experience. Say print number 1, cells. Actually, we don't need to do that. We already have it here. We do our S text 1. Actually, that's not true. Print number 1. Before we need the text, we actually need to write the this time string. So I just put this in between. That's final time string. And then we have our last bit of text here. Number 1, text 2. And also, whenever you're working with files, we opened it here. We also need to close it. We need to make sure we have that in here before we go any further. Before the end of this, we need to, actually, before we did that, actually, I completely missed this when I wrote this. But for every 4, you need a next, which ends that loop. Similar to the end if, and, well, yeah, if, end if, or while, when. They just close that loop of code. And so here we need to say close, not too hard. Okay. So I think that about does it. Let's go ahead and test it out. So again, here's our text. And yeah, let's run it. Let's see if it works. Worst case scenario, also a useless file. Okay, so it's cell to text. Let's run it. Say this is test 1. That's our new file, and then we'll say English. Although there's no difference here as far as I can see between the two. It's just made up text for the sake of this example. And then we ran it. So we'll now see if it works. So we go to the desktop. There's this new file. Let's open it up. And it looks pretty good, right? We got all the way from 1 to 10. The only issue here is that if you look at our text here, it looks like our numbers have a little space in front of them. Whereas here they do not. These other spaces in terms of here are just due to spaces already being present in this file. But the numbers, there's no spaces here. This is just the number. Why that is, I can't. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not letting me. Okay, that's weird. When you write print and you have a number here, whether it be an integer or another number, it'll put a space before it. To get around that, or really the right way to write numbers to a file is to write whatever you write. But if we do it the other way, if we write, say, right here, we'll actually put quotes around that whole line of code. So if it's going to be a sentence, basically, you want to write print. If it's going to be a number, just write right. A little confusing, but not too hard to figure out if you did it wrong. Pretty simple fix. So there's one other thing we need to do, and that is here. Actually, if it's a caption rather than the actual voice, or I'm assuming this means voice, but this is just the actual text of what the people in the movie are saying. These captions are just captions. They don't actually matter, and it shouldn't be in the actual file. That's just something I was told about this specific file. we need to figure out a way to make sure these ones don't get included, these two lines. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to use, again, if, we'll say, if what cells current row, and then here we have cell 4, which is the if that's not caption, then we want to do all this code if it doesn't say caption, because we just basically want every cell that doesn't say caption in it to go into our final text file. So we'll just end that if statement here, and that should make sure that it skips over any lines that say caption. We can add another line here and just write it and it's like say caption, and it won't be added no matter what it says, other than the fact that it says caption. Yeah, so let's test this out one more time. Again, developer, macros, run our macro. We'll say test 2. We'll say, let's set something T here. I can't really see any difference, but we'll just do it. We can go say 2. And here we can compare actually side by side here. If you're right, well, actually I should open up both of the same thing. But here on the left is the one before we changed those last couple lines. And you can see that one, you don't have the space here because we used the write method instead of print. And here we actually skipped the first line and the last line because those are captions. And we accounted for those and made sure that those will not be added into the text file. So with all those things said, I believe that our program does everything that it needs to. Going forward, you could work to make it automatically go through a number of files you say had in a folder or something, but that's extra work beyond this. But this will definitely take your Excel file here and output it to the texture that you want. For anyone that has an Excel file that looks a little differently, you should be able to basically modify the things that we've done here to suit your purpose. Whether you need to add more text from this file, maybe you also want the total available time, written on another line. Pretty easy, just add another variable and then make sure that you also print it out at the end. Not too bad. This should give you the steps that you need to really do anything that you want to do as far as moving your text from Excel to a text document that you can use in a different program. Okay. Yeah, that wraps it up. So, and thanks for listening to my video here. I hope you found it informative. I'd love to hear any feedback that you have again about my speed, my talking or writing out the code, as well as the clarity. On the technical side, if the audio or video, the quality on those, if those are good or not so good, I'd love to hear. Yeah, anything beyond that, if you have any other questions, similar questions or different questions regarding Excel, VBA, feel free to shoot me a message. Might be able to help you out. Yeah, so thank you for listening. You have a great day.